Hi, everyone. Welcome to our day 3 of our first welcome week. So today we're going to chat a little bit about accessibility and outreach through our communitypsychology.com. We have two wonderful speakers that are going to lead our presentations for today. And so I'm just going to go ahead and just pass that on over to our first presenter, Jadwiga.
Good morning, all. So let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So let's go ahead and perfect. Everybody can see this, right?
You're good to go.
All right. So I am going to talk about accessibility and inclusion, specifically how you can use them when you are doing things for Scrum. So this has been really important as we're going forward, especially with as we discuss our new website. So today I'm going to cover how to create inclusive meetings, presentations, workshops, and videos. So in order to do that, I've kind of broken it down into 3 parts. We're going to discuss how to create access for those with hearing impairments, how to create access for those with visual impairments, and then just access considerations in general. So for people who need auditory access, these are some tips for it. So what we want to do is enable the closed caption feature for all meetings, regardless of attendees' abilities. The AI Zoom, which is the one we use, is not ADA compliant, but it is still useful as an accessibility tool. Now, when we have conferences and whatnot, we will actually get actual translators when we need them as well. So when we do need an ASL translator, the meeting host must spotlight the translator in order to capture the translation in the video. So this here, and I'm happy to hand this presentation out to, there's a link here on the directions for how to do that. So another tip, create breakout rooms manually so that the ASL translator and the member who need translation are in the same room. And then the other recommendation is to send out keyboard shortcuts before the meeting so that participants can familiarize themselves with those shortcuts. For visual access, it's really important that you avoid using color combinations that limit individuals with color blindness from seeing contrast. So those are red and green combinations, dark colors and dark hued combinations, mid color tones, and light colors and gray combinations. So this particular presentation, for instance, I use a tool to check and make sure that we have the right contrast between the color of the text and the color of the background. So you want to make sure that you describe images and any visual content that is displayed during the presentations. And that could be describing it verbally so that people can, so that they know that there's an image there. And that's also like using alt text. So you can provide verbal instructions on how participants can ask questions, right? The same thing when replying to questions or comments in Zoom chat, read the comment and supporting comments out aloud and repeat the question. If there's content in a slideshow, read all of the content or explain. And I know that that gets redundant. And I think as teachers, you might hear differently, right? That maybe it's boring to read all of it, but for those who can't read it, it's very important. So here, if you do ever have a request, is a screen reader plugin for those who do have visual impairments. So here are some access considerations for all meetings and presentations. So in addition to the steps to provide visual and auditory access, the following should always be employed. Enable always show meeting controls in Zoom. Provide instructions for how attendees can participate both verbally and visually. Send resources that are shared in the chat in a separate email. You can shorten URL links with bit.ly in order to make them easier to understand auditorily. Zoom polling should not be used. It is not easily accessible for some individuals. Keep in mind that users in the following regions are not able to access Zoom. That's in Crimea, Donetsk, and Luhansk in Ukraine, Iran, North Korea, Syria, and Cuba. So I made a lot of these presentations and I go through them and I constantly try to improve. So I kind of wanted to show So the pitfalls that I have come across when doing this. So let's see. This is going to go ahead and load. This is one of my favorite softwares to use for presentations is this. So it's Prezi, but if you use Prezi, and it's something I really wanted to use, it doesn't allow you, I apologize for my hotel internet right now. It doesn't allow you to add alt text for image. So when you look at, so this, I thought, was visually grabbing, but there was no ability to add alt text so that someone who was visually impaired, while those who were able to see it visually might enjoy it, those who had a visual impairment would not be able to use a screen reader to see what these images were. So a second one that I made an error on, and Amber had pointed this out to me, was that this is this contrast between these two is not readable. You could switch them and have a white background with black or dark blue text on it for those who have color blindness, but this combination doesn't work. And so you can actually see that this is now titled Accessibility and Inclusion version 3. So these are all things to keep in mind. Now we are going to be redoing the website, and I know that we now currently have people who have administrative capabilities on the website. So if you are uploading anything onto the website, or if you are creating content for either the current website or the future iterations, here are some really important keys, and they're things that have to be done for ADA compliance. And it's very important for us to remain ADA compliant on our website because we are actually required to do so. Images, you need to have an alt description. You need to choose images that make sense contextually. Avoid images that have movement, especially if that movement cannot be paused or stopped. We have on the front of our current website, we have a scroll of photos, and that's something we'll have to change. Do not use text over images because that can be difficult to differentiate. Color, do not rely on color to communicate content, which is, again, hard, visually, but for what we're doing, our purposes, we are informing and we are educating. And so we want to make sure that we are doing it in a way that everyone can access. So you can use a contrast checker to check your colors, which need to meet or exceed a 4:5:1 ratio. You can click on this link and it will give you hex codes, which are what I use. And I input those hex codes into your slides, into PowerPoint, and it will give you hex codes that work together, and it will then show you the ratio that those work on. So format, include a descriptive title. Don't skip heading levels. Make headings descriptive. Left align for readability, which was a big one for me. I always want to center align. Visually for me that works, but not for people. For the best accessibility, you want to left align. Chunk the web pages into sections instead of avoid walls of text. Exactly. So do not create hyperlinks with generic terms like click here, more info. Hyperlinks should be descriptive and unique. And also make sure you don't rely on color alone for hyperlinks. So make sure there's color here, right? For here, there's color and there's outlining. So finally, here are some resources on accessibility. These are standards that were given by APA. And then also here's my email if you end up having any questions about it. I wanted to let you know, and again, you can email me, but I do have, let me move this, which is just a Google Doc that I keep whenever I'm going through, right, what considerations I need to have. These are the considerations, and I'm happy to send this out or provide this as content for anyone who needs it. So that is the end of my presentation, but I would love to answer any questions that anyone might have, or if anyone else has share any resources or any experiences that they've had with needing to create ADA compliant, media or marketing content. Hi, Chris. Yes.
Trying to start my video here. Just a quick question. Will these slides be available somewhere because love to have access to those hyperlinks. Can't really click on them in Zoom.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and send all of those out. Maybe I'll just send it out to everybody so that we can have it because they're great. It's a great resource.
Or I mean, even on the current website, maybe there could be an accessibility section or something so that we could, find them going forward, and your Google Doc.
Yes, I like that idea. That's probably a perfect way to get the information across.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. So, well, if no one else has it, let me go ahead and pass it on down to the exciting world of entry points for communitypsychology.com.
Hey y'all. Thanks Jadwiga for that interesting presentation. And I'm thinking about how accessibility has changed. I was an early adopter of accessibility, and then how things, we know science has improved. And so we just know a lot more. And I learned a lot just in this process of trying to make my own presentation accessible. So anyway, thank you so much for that. I'll just say hi to all of you. This is a little bit of a weird situation for me because I think all of you have some pretty extensive knowledge of entry point. I know, Cherie, I've worked a lot with you. Michelle, if you don't mind unmuting, I want to make this useful for everyone. And so I've got some background information, but if you have specific interest, if you don't mind unmuting yourself, and then, maybe we could just tailor this presentation to on the fly to what people are most interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to say hi. So I'm just here to learn. I don't think I have any specific questions, and this is an area that I don't know much about. So I'm just here to learn.
Awesome. Can I ask what you do for a day job?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a psychology professor.
Mm-hmm.
So already I'm thinking, oh, I need to change my PowerPoints for class. So, but I think I'm here in this role as a SCRA member and a secretary of SCRA.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you. Well, then I will just kind of on the fly tailor what I'm going to talk about specifically to an academic setting and how it might benefit you, your colleagues, and students. And then Cherie, if you want to just jump in at any time, because I know we've done, that you've been very successful in using this in your classroom in ways that I hadn't thought to talk about. So prior to meeting Michelle. So if you want to jump in at any time, that'd be awesome.
Here I am. I just made it to work. I was about to get out the car.
Oh, no. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay. So one of the things, so since I've met you, Ashley, as well as the rest of the group, and sorry, my camera's not on, it will be shortly, but is to really embed research in our CP program. We're not a research kind of institution, but we've been moving towards that way. And I've been kind of pushing to move towards that way because research is great. And all the things that I've been learning in the various I would say groups in SCRA, even going to the biennial has really shifted my program a lot. And Ashley, I actually have my first intern that will be starting this fall. And I'm so glad to see your face on here because you jogged my memory on connecting with you to really move forward. So one of the things that I wanted to do in the classroom was to have a project in which the students would, write and learn how to do the journal writing because they think it's so scary. And we actually had a breakthrough a few months ago where students actually just did presentations or presented things that they're working on in our program. And they were like, oh my God, this is not bad. And I was in tears because I'm just like, finally a breakthrough, and the students actually see it's you don't have to be perfect at it, but just grasping, learning how to do it, getting their feet wet and moving forward. Now they want to come back. Oh, can we come back as alumni? Can we do what you said you were talking about? So um I know sometimes we just have to be patient with things, because I'm just like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? But sometimes it just comes at its own pace. So, but I think it's a great way for students, especially the students that I serve, predominantly Hispanics and African American students, for them to write about what they are actually about the communities in which they work in, because many of my students are already in the workforce, as working in community-based organizations and teachers, or the second teacher in the classroom. So they get to, talk about it. They get to do photo voice. They get to do all of that. So that's it. Sorry to take over everything, but I really want to get this this going, but I think this is the time, and we have some other projects that we're working on for next year. So, and this will be great for it.
That's wonderful. Of course, I love hearing that, because, inspiring students and demystifying the writing process is one of our key objectives of
Yeah.
Entry Point. Yeah. Well, so, I'll back up just a bit, Michelle, and say, we invite anyone to this. CommunityPsychology.com is a website that is run by SCRA. It is different than SCRA 27 website that Jadwiga referenced, that's like internal for SCRA and mostly for members and people in the field. CommunityPsychology.com, the target audience is people who are either new to the field or people who are doing the work but don't necessarily consider themselves to be community psychologists yet. And so, we want to bring people into that space. And so we invite anyone. So people from tenured faculty, and we certainly have had a lot of contributions there, to students, to people who are new doing the work. And we especially invite students and community practitioners because, sometimes they're best to write for audiences like themselves. Right. And so they're not using words like pedagogy and, some other words that I have to say, okay, either define this or we have to use a synonym, something like that. So also, recognizing that lots of community-based work, so work that's happening in organizations, by individuals, by activist groups, there's often fewer outlets available, right? So they may not have a research project per se that they could publish in a peer-reviewed journal, or they may not know someone, have someone part of that group that can help translate those findings into that format. So there's fewer outlets available, and that's really our niche. We want to elevate the work that's happening in community psychology and make it accessible to all, democratize that information. So the term Entry Point was created. We created an entry point because it was, this is meant to be a point of entry into a deeper dive into the field, into the topic area, into other work that the author might have done. And so an entry point, is intended to pique interest and drive to a more in-depth look at your work. So it's not meant to be, this is comprehensive of the field in general in one page. It's not a Cliff Notes, Spark Notes for people that were born after the 70s, but that's not the intent. The intent is rather to pique the interest and drive people to want to learn more. My job, really simply, and I have the best job, is just make this process easy. So when it comes to working with students, like Cherie was talking about, I say, have your students submit. You know, if there is, and my definition of sort of, is this workable, is really wide. I also have been a faculty member. I've done a lot of publishing with students. I'm very comfortable in that space. And I know students are coming to us eager, but then they're going to have a range of writing skills, a range of experience with the published literature. And so I work with them. And sometimes that takes hours and hours of mentoring and talking with them. And then they write something, and then I make a few suggestions and do it myself. So my job is to make the person who's submitting job easy. And so what you end up getting, and let me just show this slide. Can you see the slides on your screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So on the screen now is a homepage. This is the homepage of communitypsychology.com. I'm going to do a live demo in a minute, but so you're familiar with what this looks like. And so they're Huffington Post-like entries. So usually 2 pages or so. Again, very, top level that would drive more interest into their work. So that's followed by links to the organization, links to the work, links to anything that's published. It can be a report that's on an organizational website, anything like that. We don't, to help demystify the writing part, this has worked out really well, actually. It was just an idea that I had, and I can't believe it. Sometimes you're like, I don't know if this is going to work, but it did, is creating a Google form. And because oftentimes, like, newer authors don't think, sitting in front of a piece of paper is scary, but responding to a question like, what are the, if you were talking to a friend, what are 3 things you would tell them about this work? What did you love most about this work? What do you think about this work is most connected to the field of community psychology? People can often respond to prompts better than sort of writing that in a flowing paragraph form. So we do not ask people to write it and then we just publish it. We ask people to fill out a form. I take the inputs and I try to stay as true to their voice as I can. And I kind of slot into spaces. And so their answers to the prompts become a Huffington Post-like comprehensive piece. And then I send it back to them and say, this is what I heard from your entry. What do you think? And we never publish until both the author, all the authors, and myself all feel good about it. It's edited. We never put anything up there that would be possibly embarrassing or could be a problem with copyright, nothing like that. So that's kind of my job too, to also just go behind and ensure that authors have success on this platform. It's a good opportunity for students. SCRA is able to offer a $50 stipend, which has done 2 wonderful things. One, again, I think it's democratized publishing, because we know that a lot of students, have to do the trade-off of their time is like, we've got to, I either go to work or I have to do this, right? And so we want this, we can never pay someone what their intellectual property is worth. But I think that it provides a little bit of support for students to work on these things. And it also, I think for many of the people I've worked with, even professionals that have been in the field, this is the first time they've ever been directly paid for their intellectual contributions. And I think that there's something in that is transformative for people to start to think of themselves as not just takers of knowledge or absorbers of knowledge, but generators of knowledge. Your voice has value, and monetarily, like, you can take that $50 and go out and buy a t-shirt with it because of inflation. But, again, it's not much, but it is something, and that can be very appealing to students. So now what I'll do, I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to share the website with you. Okay, so here's the homepage that I just showed. Oops, it's not saying that I'm sharing. Can you see the website? I'm
Yep.
scrolling on it.
Yeah,
Yes?
you're good.
Yes? Okay, perfect. All right, so here's the homepage. I see already it's got things that can't be stopped that are flashing, so we'll need to address that. But on the website, most relevant to this conversation. So people, when they publish, they're Entry Point is featured on this homepage of the website. So it's filed two places. New things get filed on the homepage and under a topic area, and I'll show you. And then after, when things have been, read and they've been on the homepage for a while, then they just exist within the topic. So people are like, that's really cool. My work gets to be on the homepage of an organizational website. It draws, a lot of interest to people. So, we've got, and then we also file things so that entry points can be Googleable by topic. We know that sometimes faculty members will say, I would like for you to write a short paper on what community psychologists have to say about, how they see, a sense of community. What is a sense of community, like as a phrase? What does that mean? Right. And sometimes students will choose a topic like, I'm really interested in immigrant justice. So they'll go here, and these are all things that have been vetted by community psychologists or people who are contributing to communities. And it gives you, it's not intended to be like, this is everything we know about immigrant justice, but it does, over time, we've got quite a few entries here, and it gives you a broader perspective of what community psychologists are thinking about, are publishing, and kind of some next directions for the field. So students might be interested in this that are thinking about a master's thesis or a dissertation or even a class paper. Any questions? Let me pause there and take a breath, see any questions so far. Hearing none. I'm sure it's because I've been incredibly comprehensive, right? Hearing none. So
Correct.
yeah, thank you, Jackie. So when things go on the website, we also do active work promoting it. So Jadwiga and I have a partnership where we featured on the website. We also send it out in the e-newsletter, which goes out once a month. So, and that the audience of that is predominantly SCRA members, but not exclusively. We also promote it on our Facebook page and Twitter. And many people link their organization. So I'll give you another example of like some pieces that I've gotten recently. They've been community-based organizations that have written final reports for their funder, but they have, as part of their grant, maybe some dissemination requirements, or they just want to get the word out there. Like, this was a really successful project, and I would like to connect with other people who are doing projects like this. And so we are, so when it goes out on social media, we can tag those organizations, those individuals, and they can reshare the SCRA feed. And so it's a way to amplify the effect for both of our benefits, right? And so again, we're hoping to draw people to the field of community psychology and get our voices out there. And people want to meet other people like themselves, right, with the same kinds of interest and approaches, ideological approaches to the work, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a community psychologist, whether or not you post, just like anyone of any level can submit. I mean, I've had people that don't have a bachelor's degree submit to communitypsychology.com and have absolutely great pieces that have gotten a lot of views, up to people who were very, very seasoned, with the work, who feel like, I did this really great thing and it's sitting in a journal behind a paywall. I would like to get this out there to a wider audience. So we get between 5,000 and 7,000 page views a month. So that is way more than, for example, if something is behind a paywall for American Journal of Community Psychology, or if it's, even if it's not behind a paywall, if it's in that first month or two where it's open access. Because again, why would people who don't identify in the field go to a field specific journal to look? And the language, AJCP is definitely much better than other journals about this, but sometimes people don't want to interact with academic literature because it's not friendly for them, right? Our ideal audience for these is someone with a 9th grade education who's like running maybe a YMCA youth program and wants to know more about mentorship, right? Not because they can only read at a 9th grade level, but because they're looking at this on their phone on the subway, right? We intend with the way that we format things and the way that we put, the way that we write in an approachable style, we want for folks to, you know, feel like that they belong and are connected with that body of work. It's also, the website's a good place for feedback on new and emerging ideas. So I really like that we have a part, and I'll show you here on the website. So we have entry point and a different form for things that are published, like in a journal, you know, on a web page, and things that are in the idea formulation stage. They maybe have some pilot data behind it, or maybe just like they've done some key stakeholder interviews, or they haven't some thoughts about it. And they've, you know, it's not like, oh, I have an idea, but, you know, there's been some thinking on it, but they'd like to get feedback before, you know, they pursue it, right? How do completely new ideas get generated? Well, I think that communitypsychology.com can help be a platform for those new ideas. So I'm just sharing my screen again. Okay. Ooh, no, that was the wrong screen. Let me try, again. Issue archives. There we go. Okay. So I'm a little confused. So are you seeing my scrolling? Can somebody?
No, we're seeing your
Yes.
PowerPoint.
Those slides. Okay, even though, okay, let me try again. Okay, how about now?
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so if you go here to submit your work, so you see there's, you know, a general introduction to Entry Point, what we're looking for, you know, all of the information that I've just shared with you. And here, this is maybe what you might expect, and actually probably most of what we get is wanting to expand the viewership of published work. So here, you know, we've got the template here. A lot of people just copy and paste it, do it on a separate sheet, and then upload it. That's fine. But you'll note that we also have a specific template for unpublished work. And it's very much like the one for published work, because as community psychologists, one of our values is that knowledge comes from everywhere and it's not dependent on where we might have published it within a capitalist, hierarchical, you know, academic journal publishing. Anyway, that's what I think anyway. So, so on here, we've retooled the questions to be more friendly to people who haven't published. And so here, you know, the key findings, and then, you know, describe your project. So either form will get you to initiate it into the process of an entry point. But people can select either entry, you know, either way to come into the entry point. How we doing? I'm doing a temperature check. Since no faces, no nothing. Am I addressing some of the questions that you were hoping I would?
Thank
Even
you.
I've learned from this too. And I've been
Yeah.
doing these presentations with you. This has been really good.
Okay, well,
Deeply
thanks.
appreciated. Yeah, no, great stuff.
That's very kind of you.
Ashley, do you get a lot
Yes.
of like groups that write, so more than one author?
Yes, I asked for a lead author just because then that way, let's say there's 10 folks. Here's a common example. There'll be a class project and they want to write up, like a professor will assign group work to go out into a community-based organization and do something, and then they come back. And so they've all contributed to it. I need a point of contact, and we do ask for order of authorship, which doesn't have to be the first author doesn't have to be my key contact, but you know, I need someone to say like, yes, we're done with our edits, or yes, this is good to go. But yeah, we have, I would say almost all of our pieces have multiple authors, and in reality, you know, they're working on their part, they submit it, I look at it, I put it into an entry point format, you know, send it back, maybe highlight some things like this was amazing, I'd love to hear more about this. We have a pretty good pulse on what our viewership wants. We've done some extensive work looking at metrics, both previously with Siphe and now with Google Metrics. And so we know topics, we know times of the day, we know regions of the world and what their topics that they're interested in. And so, you know, we use all of that data to prepare, like I use it on my end to prepare the piece so that it's going to have the maximum amount of impact. And then I'll send that back to whomever, you know, the point of contact. Then they can work with their people and send it back to me, and I publish it when it's ready.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to just make a call for why this is so important, because you know, we started this effort in 2018 and, you know, it rolled out slowly. And I think, you know, I would love to see it even grow. I mean, it's grown exponentially and I'd love to see it grow. And particularly it aligns well with a lot of the discussions that we're having in SCRA already, right? We want to get our community psychology related voices out there in the public space. Even though, you know, we may not, people doing the work may not call themselves community psychologists, but are doing the work. Because when we're not speaking, someone else is speaking for us. And I just want that to sit for a minute in a way, because once these things are published, they are Googleable. They, many of our pieces have so many hits that in the Google metrics, it's high on a search, right? So if you're searching a certain topic, so we don't know who's going to be searching that topic. It could be a student in Indonesia. It could be a British, I mean, somebody who's looking to write a story about something, right? And we want to put ourselves in a position where we're doing good work, and the good work that we're doing is influencing the public discourse, right? And so this is a way to get that voice out with support from SCRA that makes it higher in the kinds of metrics that other people will see them, if that makes sense. So I'll just transition this last part, you know, when to publish and what exactly, you know, what's the call, you know, what's the, I always would tell my students, you should always have an elevator speech, and everything you say with, I would love to see this. Would you please do this? And so, you know, the kinds of topics, people can write about any kinds of topics. And as you saw on the screen when I showed, there's lots of different categories. And of course, the best topic is always the one that you can write about. We particularly welcome topics that are timely, and you don't always know what's going to be timely. Right? We're one news cycle away from something that didn't get a whole lot of attention to getting a ton of attention. And I'll give you one example, is work that was done at SCRA related to immigrant rights and about the impacts, the mental health impacts on children and their parents who were detained at our southern border in the US. And, you know, that piece was, we kind of knew it was happening in the news. The piece was developed and was like ready to go when, you know, something happened. There was a death at the border. I can't remember exactly what that policy, how the policy window opened. And we had that piece and bam, we published it. And it is still getting hundreds of views every single week. Now imagine if your work or the work of your students, you know, and I try to get back to people and say, do you know how many people, like what you say matters? Do you know how many people? Do you know that 25 people in Indonesia, just again, using that as an example, like searched and looked up your piece last week? And that can be so encouraging for all of us, right? We want to see when, you know, what we do matters. And so with that particular example with with immigration, it was timely. We got it out there, and it got now, at least last time I checked, it was still, when you do immigrant and children on Google, it was the #1 thing that came up because of the number of hits. Even when there was other people who had paid Google to advertise, it's still, there's a whole system about how Google, what they show you first, right? And there are people who are paid to manipulate that. I am not that person. We don't have that person here at SCRA. That person is very expensive, but we do, the surefire way is to get to be out there and to be seen, right? And so that particular piece still gets hundreds of views per week, even though, maybe there's not as much public discourse about that topic now as there, was a couple of years ago. So the best pieces are timely, and, something that folks are passionate about. Just because we don't have a certain topic, I haven't run across a single entry point that hasn't fit pretty well within a certain topic, usually several topics. But if it is a community-based, if they're making an argument that's community-based work or thinking, then it's a good fit for us. And then finally, I'll just show again about the website again, and show you kind of how to do stuff. Okay, you can see my scrolling. Please confirm.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so here's the homepage. It is very aptly named communitypsychology.com, no space, right? You could just peruse it. If you're new, again, because we use this as a tool, SCRA uses this as a tool to draw people to the field, not necessarily to SCRA as an organization, because they could be living, who knows where, but to the field. We definitely want colleagues to join us in the field. So we've got some about things. Here are the issues that I showed you before. And you can certainly look through this, research and practice. These terms are not, there's a lot of overlap, and I think that reflects the dialogue within SCRA and in the field in general, that, research informs practice, which informs research, and very few of us are either one or the other, right? And so, but in general, if you're looking, if I'm a student writing a paper and I need a citation, then maybe I'm going, that can be helpful in certain context. And then again here, this is where, I would love for you to show your students, read the page, see if it might help them write a paper for your class. Take a look at this, see how easy it is. Also, if they haven't written anything, haven't been involved, let's say they're freshmen or first-year grad students and haven't been involved in research, I have a list of 350 recommendations from our SCRA community of things that they thought were seminal. And I say that word, I did air quotes because I hate that word so much, but it's hard to know, important in the field, and that they would like to see an entry point about. So, if a student's interested in making $50 and wants to write something, I can send them the list. They can pick something that interests them. They can write about it and we can publish it, right? So you don't have to publish on your own research. You don't have to publish on your own research that like your faculty member, your mentor is working on. You can publish on something that they read about in class that they thought, this is great. I ask, if they can email me, that's great, just to make sure it's not already on the website. But yeah, there's like so much, possibilities there. And so my ask for you is to think about entry point for your students, assigning an entry point, submitting an entry point as an assignment. If you could think about, giving communitypsychology.com as a reference for your students for writing papers, for learning more about topics. If you personally would consider writing an entry point, again, we've talked a lot about what this can do for students. But I think all of us like to know that our work is not locked behind a paywall. a lot of us are involved in community-based organizations that having something on a website like this would be huge. They could tell their funders, they could tell their supporters, they could tell their executive board, they can tell their volunteers, hey, look at this. So you think about doing an entry point, and then also, you know, ways in which that you can get your students involved. I see that there's a chat. Let's see. Oh, thanks, Chris. And with that, that's what I had planned to talk about. What questions or other things would you like to talk about?
I just wanted to say how thorough that was. Like, I really appreciated, even for me, seeing the different ways that it could be utilized, like, you know, in classrooms, in, you know, with community. Just, I appreciate you expanding the ways that I could even look at entry points. So thank you.
And I'll also make an offer. I'm happy to come to your classes too. Amber is not shy about asking. And Cherie, I think that we've done this once, maybe twice. Just, I'm happy to come in spaces sometimes. You know, I used to be younger and look younger, where it seemed kind of like I was maybe more approachable, but I'm really enthusiastic about this, y'all. And I think that our students, the sooner we can get new people, young people, you know, people just starting out to think of themselves as authors and not just readers, I think it benefits them and it benefits us as a society, because then we're bringing more people to the table. And so I'm happy to like just share that message and my enthusiasm in person. You can just send me an email. We can schedule a time. I'd love to, you know, be able to share that with them directly if that's what you'd like. Chris, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, couple of things on my mind. Number one, I'm curious about how many entry points are we getting a year or a month, or what's our rate on those?
Well, we send 3 a month out through our e-newsletter. I'm looking here to see, let me tell you exactly how many we have right now. So multiplied out, that's yeah, it's like over 60 a year. But let me tell you, I can ask your next question and I can look up.
Okay, the next question that I have is, or more maybe a suggestion for Amber and you and Jadwiga. But I'm wondering if we might be able to get our councils and IGs to start submitting entry points as a way of promoting their specific topical area as an interest group or council.
I would love that. We got, when we set up the website in 2018, and then we did it again in 2019, just to kind of check back with councils. So councils, we encouraged councils specifically to write entry points, but also to review, you know, I wrote the write-up of, you know, what it means, like aging research. You know, I wrote that blurb. I am not, you know, I'm not an expert on all of those issue areas. And I was like, what do you think? And so we got some feedback on that. Some councils have been really engaged. I present to the councils in council meetings at least once a year. So that way we're capturing like newer people to the council and tell them about entry points. Amber's been great about setting that up for me. So we have that opportunity. And then once a year, usually twice a year, right before the beginning of the semester, I will write to the listserv and say, anybody that missed it, let me tell you. For the, I know for the SCRA biennial, the last one we had in person, I will literally do anything to get the word out. So I dressed up in a costume. I dressed up like a bee on a costume I got on eBay. And
I remember this.
Yeah, I was like, what's the buzz around entry points? And so, you know, I mean, if I have to dress up like a bee or some other weird animal so that people, and I had a big button, ask me why I'm dressed up like a bee. And people came and took pictures of me. And then I had their attention for 15, 30 seconds. Like, well, let me tell you about entry point. So, you know, we've used those kinds of things to get the word out. And it's just a good reminder. What I found is that the best recommendations come from personal, like a tap. Just like what we know about information dissemination. I can dress up like a bee, I can send out something on the listserv, but when somebody talks about an idea and you say, that'd be a great entry point, that is really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking about in terms of our council seemed fairly active. Our interest groups sort of wane and flow and become active and then less active. But the various areas that our interest groups are addressing seem perfect for entry point and also opportunities for activity within the interest group. So
and people with experience writing tell me it takes less than an hour to do the part where they're responding to prompts. I mean, and a newer writer might take a little bit more time, but it's intended not to be a heavy lift.
mm-hmm.
But I want to answer your question. So we have 268 pieces on entry points right now on the website, and we're growing by I think we get about 75 a year.
Wow, that's terrific. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, Michelle, I see you have raised your hand.
Yeah, so I have so I'm planning my my fall class, and I guess I'm wondering about wrapping assignments in with the entry point, but I have a question and I have two questions. So my first is like, I'm still unclear on, do they have to be writing something about their own research, or can it just be somebody else's research that they read that they want to summarize, or an interesting point of topic that they want to put on that? Like, does it have to be their own research?
No.
Okay.
That's the short answer. I'm such an introvert, so I was like, keep going. This is what I tell my teenage son, like, I need your answer in the form of a paragraph. The short answer is no. The longer answer is they may write about, let's say they were really inspired, something that they read in your class. They can write an entry point on it. One thing about assignments, so you can say as an assignment, all right, I'm going to just copy and paste the whole entry point, and then we're going to have a competition or whatever, because like we can't publish 15 entry points on the same piece of work. Right. So, some faculty might say, okay, your assignment is read this. It's really important to this class. Write an entry point about it. The one that does it so most comprehensively, or the three best, will be invited to submit the entry point. That way you get a copy of the assignment in time to grade it, and then there's like a potential outlet. I loved as a grad student myself, like when my work would mean something beyond just a teacher grading it. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be about their work. If they don't know what to write about, I have them email me. I'll send them the list of, like, I know it's well over 100 of articles that I know our members are interested in becoming entry points. So either of those are perfectly welcome.
Right. So that's where that was my second question is I'm teaching undergrad community psychology. So I can't ensure the quality of any of this will be like worthy of publishing. And I have, I want to make sure that if they're writing something about an article and it's not theirs, that somebody is double checking to make sure that it's representative of the original work.
Yeah.
Because, with undergraduate students, they might be misinterpreting methodology or, implications or any of it. But I'm wondering if it makes sense to, since I'm looking for a final project anyhow, and I was going to have them read a research article anyhow, of their own finding, if there are specific entry points that you're looking for, and you have a list of articles that the members want to hear about, if I could give that list to the students and assign it as a final paper for the class, and then give the students the option of submitting it to the Entry Points website and seeing if they can get it published. And I'm sure the money will be very persuasive for them to want to do that. But I'm wondering if that it would be like a good use of the tools and something that you would like to see, or if that's not helpful.
It's raining content right now. I'm loving it. I'm bathing in the, yes.
Thanks,
Yes,
Sheree.
I would love to work with the students. I do think I would ask if you can just give me a heads up that I know like 15, 35 entry points are coming like on this day. That would be helpful. So I'm like, what has happened?
I only have 16 students, and I'll definitely.
Okay. Well, even with
let you know.
16, what I would ask is if you grade their papers, like let's do the step, you grade their papers. If they're totally off base. Now I do go back when I know it's a student, I do go back and check, but I'm not an expert on every single topical area. So did they describe that, some of these have like some methodology that's like, whoo, I don't know. Like these undergrads know more than me about some of these kinds of new quantitative analyses and things like that. So if you can kind of be that first layer, because they're going to ostensibly write about something that's within your area, of teaching the class, take a first pass at it and then invite those that you think are good, those that you think are aligned with what we're doing, and of 16, maybe that's 10, maybe it's all 16, who knows, to submit. That would be helpful. So then I kind of know that, plus your heads up will tell me like, okay, yeah, these have been vetted to be appropriate. Because it's awfully hard when students submit to such an inclusive thing and then they just have no chance of getting published. We want to set them up for success.
Yeah. And I've had that problem before. I had an op-ed student once, op-ed writing assignment one time where the paper was about to publish it. And then at the last, like the 11th hour, the senior editor pulled it, and the student was very crushed. I was actually crushed too. So I want to avoid that as well. Can I email you with a list of you said,
yeah, that'd be great. I'll drop my
options.
Do you have my email address? I can just drop my email in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I know our time is coming to a close here. Let me just quick drop my, do what I said I would do. Any other final thoughts? No? Okay. Michelle, do you mind dropping your email in the chat and I'll initiate it. My computer is frozen. Perfect. Got it. Okay. Well, I'm happy to stay on, but I also, want to be sensitive to time. So, and thank you all so much for joining. It's been great. I love talking to y'all.
Thank you so